and we usually had a good time talking for 10 to 15 minutes. I taught myself to keep our phone conversations light, or as I like to think of it, complication-free, without lying. I didn't want to lie to her. I wanted to be able to talk to my mother the way I could with most other people, as myself. But she wasn't just anybody. She was my mother, so that was impossible. There were limits. We only dove into subjects that wouldn't end in arguments, which was mostly whatever would make us both laugh. When she said that thing to me, that I could always come home, part of me wanted to reply, "Mama, I love you, but I'll work myself past the white meat down to the bone and fistfight every stranger I run across on the street before we live under the same roof again." That was the hyperbolic expression of a feeling I did not allow myself to verbalize, for fear of ruining our smooth interaction. And it would have. There was no way to make it sound like a joke, because in some way, I wasn't joking. I got angry with myself for even thinking the thought, because I knew it would hurt her to know it had ever been in my mind. I got mad at myself, too, for not saying it out loud anyway, for not caring if it hurt her, if it meant telling the truth. Before she called, Kelly and I were eating. We were lovers who lived together, trying to find out if we had whatever turned two people in love into the kind of family either of us wanted. We decorated and burrowed into our apartment, the nest, as he began to call our tight, warm space. We hung cheap framed prints on the walls, topped bookshelves with action figures and small stuffed animals. We created a barricade between our softest selves and the sharp elbows of the city surrounding us. It wasn't that we couldn't take a hit. We just weren't used to the pace. But we still believed we could figure it out. Either way, we were finally home, in our home, together. And I felt protected by our walls and the love shared there between them. In our small kitchen, I wanted to cook for everyone and anyone, which mostly ended up being Kelly. It was a developing skill, but to my surprise, I was not a disaster. It was one of the ways I was learning to soothe myself, suggested by a therapist who told me, "Take the time to feed yourself food that feels good and tastes good. Who better to do that for than you?" It felt like exactly the kind of thing you pay someone to say to you. I still did it. Losing myself in the construction of a meal was the closest thing I had to a hobby. The night my mother called, I made pasta. I tried to prepare the food to be served hot and ready minutes after Kel walked through the door. He would have eaten my pasta at any temperature I offered it to him, but I wanted to get it right. When he closed the bookstore where he worked, he didn't get home until 9:45 p.m. at the earliest, closer to 10 if he had to count the drawer more than twice. My timing didn't always work out, but this evening I pulled it off. Our plates were piled with thick ropes of linguine and a homemade garlic tomato sauce oozing from the ends of our forks. When my phone buzzed on the counter, I'd squinted at the screen before answering. I'd been trying to spend less time holding or even looking at my phone. Kelly could walk away from his phone for half a day before remembering it existed. Engaging with various social media platforms didn't appeal to him the same way. He often asked me to put mine away, to be present with him, especially during meals. He wasn't wrong to ask, and I did not resent the request unless it embarrassed me. I knew I spent too much time on my phone, but sometimes I wished he could ignore that as well as I could. Still, I loved and wanted to be present with him. The only reason I gave a second thought to answering the phone during our meal was that my mother had worked the same job for more than 2 decades, and these days was almost always asleep by 9, if not before. Seeing her name flash across my phone screen worried me.